All right, guys. I hope everybody's doing well. Good morning. I don't know if there's any lag here, so you may have to skip forward a little bit to get to the actual content you want. I'm just going to briefly go through the last few pages that I've done and then jump into my exercises. And all I'm doing here is providing a way to document my progress. I'm excited because I joined a class called School for Visual Storytelling. The actual class is called Graphic Novel Pro. It's taught by Jake Parker and Sean. I'm going to drop his last name. I want to say Crystal, but I'm not 100%. So hopefully I'll get that squared away in my mind. But I want to practice daily, get in the habit of practicing daily. Now, I've been teaching art for the last 15 years, since 2010, 16 years now. And I have produced a comic in that time called The Legend of Hairpan. Cool book. I still am proud of it. I think it's a great attempt at putting my story out there. It was successful in my mind, not on any kind of scale that a professional would probably consider successful, but I was very happy with it. I sold what I considered to be enough copies to make it worth my while. I think I sold a little over 300 copies, so I was encouraged by that. However, I didn't think that the artwork was up to the level that I want it to be up to. So I'm investing in myself by taking this class and getting some help from people who know what they are doing, know what they're talking about, and who have a heart to teach and to help others, which I'm super grateful for. That is sometimes the hardest part to find are your mentors along the way. So I'm excited about that. But one of the things that's kind of a non-negotiable in their life is just daily drawing practice. And so I want to emulate that. So these are some things that I've drawn, and if you recognize these images, you may have seen them on Pinterest or on Instagram or something. I'm looking at Pinterest or Instagram to get my practice. Sometimes I will do from real life, but sometimes I just love somebody's style. So if you see some familiar work, I'm not claiming that this is my original content. If it is, then I will let you know. But most of the things that you'll see me practicing on are things that I'm looking at. This page is an exception. This is my own work. This is from my own imagination. This is kind of my main character, and I'm still working out his style and what he looks like a little bit. And so the consistency is not there yet, and it may take years to get there. I don't know. But this is my man Caden, so he's kind of the protagonist of this story, I guess. I was looking at somebody's artwork, and I'll find out one day who this artist is, but he does skulls in these really expressive ways, and I think it's a lot of fun. Excuse me. I took some of his concepts, but kind of made them my own. Like, he doesn't draw them with headphones or with a baseball head or anything like that, but I just, for whatever reason, I just wanted to do that. So, yeah. All right. Today's the day. Let's get cranking. So cool. Today's scripture that I was looking at was in Proverbs. It was Proverbs 6:6, and it says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise." And that's from Proverbs. And today is January 6th, and that's from Proverbs 6. So if you've known me for any amount of time, you'll probably know that I have this little method because there are 31 chapters in Proverbs, and there are 31 days in the month, or 30 or 29 or 28 or whatever, but that I just go to whatever chapter in Proverbs that the day is, and I just start reading through there until something hits me. And because I've had this goal of not being a sluggard, it was cool that this morning's scripture was like, yeah, man, go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. And it goes on to say more about how it has no overseer, no ruler, no one telling it what to do, but it's going to get up and it's going to get the work done. And as a result of that, it's going to have provisions to store up. So that's really cool. Oh, it's so funny. As I'm looking on Pinterest, this girl that you saw at the beginning of my sketch pad looks to be repeated by other artists. There are other artists who are doing something very similar. So I guess that series of headshots spun around like that is either a common theme or that artist is someone that other people are studying. Oh, by the way, I fell in love with a comic a long time ago called Non-Player by Nate Simpson. I think only 2 issues came out, and they were like 3 years apart, which sounds like my story. Even my story on is a little bit more on steroids, because it's been 10 years since I put out a comic. So I'm not saying that for any other reason than his artwork is absolutely gorgeous. I love it. Non-Player by Nate Simpson, and it was picked up by Image. I heard that they bought the movie option for it, and that was why he wasn't producing more comics. But then when I go on Reddit and read around, it seems like he just has other things that he is doing full time, and this is just kind of a labor of love that he just produces when he can. So I imagine by this point in his life, he could have a family. I don't know, but he could, and have a career doing something else. Like me, I have a family. I teach art. That's my career. But I love storytelling. And what's so interesting is I was challenged when I got into the comic industry because I didn't love like comics the way most people in the comic industry love comics. I actually found them very difficult to piece the story together from the information I was getting. But what I do love is visual storytelling. So, for instance, a book like what David Wiesner put out, Flotsam, that book captivated me because I could follow. There was a story and there was a heart tug. Sometimes when I would read, and I love Spider-Man, the artwork, I love the idea of Spider-Man, but this is going to sound really bad because I couldn't follow the stories. I know that's going to sound crazy because how can you not follow a comic book? It's supposed to be, the whole point of it is to make it a very action and a captivating and easy to, get a story across in a very visual way. And I'm a very visual person. Something about it, it's just too chaotic or confusing to me to actually, I would look at it simply for the art, but the story would often, I just couldn't, it would take me labor, like to go from one panel to the next. I would be like just really trying to get what was happening from one panel to the next, and it became kind of like such a mental gymnastics for me that I never really could say I truly love comics. And so it's a really weird thing for me to consider, man, I want to be in this industry because I love just the industry as just all these creatives putting out stories, and all of that appeals to me. I love it. I love going to Comic Cons. I love being an artist at Comic Cons. I love having a table. I love meeting new people. There's so much of it that I love. And then people are talking about comics, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know that one. Yeah, like, I don't know. Don't know. Nope, don't know about Deadpool. I mean, I know who he is, but I don't know the storyline, right? Batman, I know that one a little bit better. Superman, I know, but that's all because of movies. It's not because of that I was just scouring these comics and falling in love with them. So I think it's just an interesting thing. What I love about the School of Visual Storytelling is they really are not so sold on just the idea of comics. Even though it's called Graphic Novel Pro, what they are sold on is the power of visual storytelling. In fact, that's what the school is called. So there are people there that are doing children's books, which I've done a few children's books, but to be completely honest, I don't love that genre. I love graphic novels, but I love like very artful graphic novels. There was one about cats, and I want to say it was called Black Sad, but I'm not sure. But it was like a cat detective, and that was such a unique and beautiful graphic novel. And I remember that one standing out because it was in the genre that you would say it's comic book art, but it had so much more emotional pull for me. It put a lot of pieces together. Nate Simpson's Non-Player was another one. And so, yeah, I just think that's... I just sometimes have been insecure, I guess, about where I sit in the whole dynamic. Ooh, I don't know why, but I see a Masters of the Universe. Oh, it's AI modified. I already asked to not see AI stuff. Okay, this one is not. Alright, so Caden, I don't want to give any spoilers, but Caden has a unique adventure ahead of him. And so This one I just think is cool because it's got a mix of anatomy and it's He-Man or Adam. No, it's He-Man on Battle Cat. So, but the anatomy is what really, the pose is really kind of unique. And so this is the thing that I'm trying to. And it's so cool because now that I've spent, like I'm on day 6, I guess, of drawing every day. I did skip a day or miss a day. But basically of this daily effort that I'm making. And what's really cool about being about 6 days in, because I didn't want to get up this morning, just so you know, I wanted to sleep in so bad. Today's the first day of school with the kids back from holiday break, and I wanted to draw, but I also was exhausted because yesterday was a teacher work day and blah, blah, blah. But I forced myself to get up and, get ready and get going. So I'm here now. What's really interesting about it is because I'm studying anatomy, and I've studied anatomy a little bit before. I love Proko's stuff online. If you don't know about Proko, I'm sure you do. It would be hard not to know about him, but if you're trying to improve your anatomy, he provided years ago just a library of videos, tutorials, and they are enough to get you started. Now, of course, there's much deeper content if you pay for that, and I've paid for a little bit, but the stuff that's for free when you are starting out, just go there. Just go there for the anatomy stuff that you're trying to learn. And I learned a lot, and I wouldn't even say that I practiced it enough that I could really, truly, completely call it my own yet. So I still have things to grow in and to learn in just from that content, not even talking about human anatomy as a whole. But when it comes to this, what's super cool being 6 days in is I can already tell some knowledge points have hit. Like where this head is placed compared to the body, I could tell that I needed to check where it was because I get that wrong. I tend to give my characters a longer neck than they really would have. And so just that one thing, because I'm able to identify something's not right about my artwork, but I don't know what it is. And that's a tough place. It's hard to be there because you're like, will this ever get solved? It feels like a pretty big roadblock, at least for me. When I'm going through it, I'm like, this is just something is not right, and hard to identify what it is. So that's one thing. And now with this head, you can see it's kind of nestled in here because He-Man is wearing this armor plate, and so there's some things rising up on his shoulders. There's this kind of shoulder piece. Cool thing also that I love about this is that you've got a big piece of armor, you've got this undergarment here, you've got the bare arm here, then you've got another I forget what they're called. You could call it an arm guard, but I think there's another name for it. But basically this forearm guard, and it's got a mix of the undergarment, like the wristband, with the armor. So you've got everything there. You've got this layered thing, and I love that, both from a style perspective, because I think it gives you a lot of visual candy to look at, and it makes the arm even more dynamic and powerful. And then I love being able to see somebody who's done the hard work of solving that and making it look believable and attractive, because now I can use that as part of my library of go-to. So here's another thing. When you find a style or something that really works for you, it's great to have Pinterest or some way to archive all of those things. So I'm going to make sure that I heart this, add it to my comic page art, which I hadn't done yet. And then I have it for later reference. And the cool thing about being an artist is, and I learned this from Pablo Picasso, he had this crazy saying. He said, it took me 3 years to learn how to basically paint like another artist. It took me a lifetime to paint like a child. And I share that with my students, my younger students especially, to help them understand that they have something more than just skill. because storytelling and creating artwork is more than just talent. It's more than just skill, and that's important to remember, because skill is definitely something. It's kind of like playing a musical instrument, right? You do have to have skill, otherwise people aren't going to listen to your playing, right? And you do have to have skill to tell your story. That's undeniable. It's just necessary. However, not everybody who can draw or create a beautiful image can tell a story. It's another skill set completely. So this is really good to know and understand. So what Pablo Picasso is saying is, look, kids have a way of communicating that moves the heart. And so I remember seeing one of his pieces early on as a teacher. It was a poster that was already hanging in my room. I didn't choose this piece. Okay, so it's just Pablo Picasso's, and it was two hands holding flowers. I sat there and I go, man, that is so amateurish, so childish. It looks like a child created it. So the first year that I was teaching was 2010. In 2011, I married my awesome wife, who's still my wife today. God bless her. And then, a year later, we had our first child. Sweet Hannah. Sweet girl. I probably shouldn't have put her name out there. At any rate, that's my daughter. Before I left that school, I left the school in 2020. So I was there for 10 years, from 2010 to 2020 or 2021. I was there for 10 or 11 years. Before I left the school, my opinion of that artwork had completely changed. So I just noticed I look very out of focus. Am I out of focus out there? Let me see if I can do this. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Maybe that's better. It looked like the background was really crisp, and then I was really kind of wonky. So I have a funny camera that doesn't really, I can do autofocus, but then it doesn't really stay focused. And what's really weird too is like if I don't know. It's bizarre. Anyway, by the time I left school, my opinion of that poster had completely changed. So my life events, the things that had happened in my life, were super significant events. These are not small things. Getting married is a huge, that is one of the most important decisions you will ever make in your life. Gentlemen, friends, ladies, if I can encourage you with one thing when it comes to that, is if you choose right, it will be the greatest blessing in your life if you choose well. If you don't choose well who you marry, it can be one of the most difficult and challenging and hard and painful choices of your life. So there you go, a little bit of knowledge. And I say that from experience on a couple of fronts. At any rate, I lucked out. When I got my wife, I hit the jackpot. So why am I sharing that when talking about Pablo Picasso's piece of artwork? Well, it wasn't until many years later that I would notice that he dated the artwork. And you want to know what the date of that artwork was? It was Valentine's Day. February 14th, and it was back in the 60s, I believe, is when it was. And then all of a sudden, I had a daughter who was old enough to give me gifts. And one of the things my daughter gave me, because, you know, a lot of children do this, but also we're artists, we're visual. My daughter's very much artistic. She'd give me drawings. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at this artwork and I want to cry. So I went from absolutely disregarding the artwork, thinking it was childish, thinking it was ridiculous, to connecting a couple more life events into it and looking at it, and then it's stirring me to the point that I could cry. Now that's really interesting. So now what I'm learning is that people actually have relationships with artwork. I know that seems weird, but they do. So they may initially disregard a piece of artwork, and then, like me, over time, grow to understand a little bit more how powerful the meaning behind it is. And this is why it's interesting, because I was one of those people who looked at the art world, and I still do in many ways, look at the art world, and I think it's ridiculous sometimes the artwork that gets uh, upheld as this fantastic example of what the arts are or can be, and especially the avant-garde stuff, the things that just don't particularly speak to me on an emotional level. I tend to just automatically dismiss them. Hopefully I'm growing and learning that's not always that I'm probably missing something, and it's okay to be missing something while that other people may be understanding and getting. That's fine. That's going to happen a lot in your life, in my life. So I've got to learn to be okay with just being not knowing and learning and being willing to accept that. So, and then the other thing I'm is being reiterated now because I'm also taking classes to get my teaching license. That is, context means a lot in art. And that's where I think storytelling comes in. Now, my art classes so far seem to think that illustration is a weird separate section of art. I'm not sure. They haven't said that outright, but it kind of feels like they look at storytelling not as art, which I think that's a pretty big mistake, because the way I understand it and think about it is art is probably the oldest. I'm sorry, storytelling is probably the oldest art form we have. And if pictures are worth 1,000 words, you have a connection right there with art and language. They're so connected to one another. Like, this is not a real cat, right? But I'm trying to make it look like a cat, and so I'm trying to think of what are the parts that make it look like a cat, and how can I communicate this idea of a cat, and how do I communicate the form of the skull so that it looks like an actual skull of a cat, and what are the markers and all of those things. So that's like one side of it. But then, wait, there's a dude riding on the back of a cat. How did that happen? It begs the question, if you don't know the story of He-Man and all of these things, that's a pretty interesting image, because in real life, I've never seen anybody riding a battle cat, a green tiger. Just haven't seen that yet. I'm sure it happens somewhere. It just doesn't happen here. And so there you go. Now that's all there is to the picture. Unfortunately, I'm running out of border here, and the foot gets cropped off right there. The back of Battle Cat is right there. So there's not a whole lot more to it. But I'm kind of studying how this big object, comes through here. Now his sword is right in here. So this is interesting positioning, because you get a lot of visual information in this negative space, which sort of from a drawing perspective can be a little bit challenging to read. Like if you're trying to emulate the artwork, there's just a little bit of negative space, kind of static there. Now I kind of like the border going with the sword today. I don't know if I'll like that forever, but there are some pieces in the background. Might get into that in a little bit. Okay, so I've been doing colored pencil on this, and I sort of like the colored pencil on top of the marker. It's kind of cool. Now, I love what I'm starting to study about shadow. So there is usually this darker portion of shadow, and then there's usually a little bit of, it's not rim light. Rim light comes from behind the object. There's usually a little bit of cast light coming off of another object that brings a little bit of light area into this. And even if it's not there, it's so gorgeous to look at that I put it there just because I like it, which is probably me just at the beginning of this journey of learning how to shade a little bit different and hopefully more in a more captivating style. I'll probably learn to use it more effectively after I've gone through the process of excitement about discovering it. Feeling like, yeah, I know something new. So I'm blown away by the artwork, by the way, and I'm not talking about the AI stuff. I'm talking about the things that artists do today in the illustration world with color, with line, with shading. Um, it's just such a noticeable jump forward from when I was in school and when I was really studying this. And so it's funny to be older than dirt and also be in a place where, like, I don't even know what these young bucks are doing as they're coming up. They're so good. There's so much good artwork. And that's one thing that's kind of sad, I guess, when I think about AI is like, oh man, we haven't even seen the next iteration that humans are doing. And you've got this digital thing that is coming out and sort of, for many people, there's a huge swell of support. I think there are many people also who are apprehensive about what does it all mean, which is always true when there's new technology coming out. There's always apprehension. There was apprehension about the internet when I was coming up, and I think that the apprehension is probably pretty warranted in many cases. I think you'd be a fool to not sit there and go, wonder what the side effects of this are going to be, or wonder how what negative impacts will happen because of this. I don't like the doomsday kind of mentality of the sky is falling, and the reason why I don't like it is not because I don't think there is some element of truth to it, but because I don't think that's the proper response. I think that the proper response is to be hopeful, not panicked. I've never looked at somebody who was panicking and gone, yeah, dude, that's what I want to be like. I've never felt that way. I've never been in a panic situation and at the end of it go, man, I'm glad I panicked the way I did. That really worked out well. I think it is wise to find out what it is that, freaks you out about it. Like for me, with AI, one of the things that I'm concerned with is that it takes away from what actually is beautiful human art, right? I mean, at the end of the day, all they're doing is copying and regurgitating in a new way information, which I think can be helpful. But it does make these leaps, inaccurate leaps, and it tells you things that are not true. And a perfect example of that is my daughter was watching a volleyball match, and there was a girl on one of the teams, one of the college teams, and she had a last name that was really rare. And I knew somebody else who was famous, not personally, but I knew a famous person with the same last name. And because it's a rare last name, I thought, I wonder if they're related. And sure enough, I go into one of these, what are they called? Chatbot. It wasn't ChatGPT, but one of these AI engines, and asked it, are these two people related? And they go, yes, that is her father. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that is so crazy. This volleyball player's dad is this guy that I've watched and seen and is extremely well known, and blah 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 blah. Turns out it's not her dad. So this search engine was like, yep, last name or whatever, and it scoured the internet. It scoured all these sources. It's sitting there, telling you this, not the sources that it went to, but just that it's going to sources. And all of that is just, man, be wary as you use the technology, because luckily that's kind of not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of high stakes. What could this mean if the information is wrong? And I'm sure some things will change, but I also I'll stick to just art on this. There is something that is so, and others have noticed this, that is so reductive about the process of gathering information now, that you don't really learn context as you're going to get it, or you don't really appreciate how difficult it is to obtain knowledge. And this is what I mean, is like, there would be a young child to say, that's not difficult. Look, I'll just type it in here. So two things. If it's that easy, be wary, okay, because ease of obtaining is rarely, um, very rarely truthful. If it came easy, be very, very wary, because the likelihood that you have the whole story is extremely low. Okay, um, and so if, for instance, let's say you had to do a research paper and you just completely used AI to do all your research. Like, you didn't cite sources other than just the whatever AI went and scrounged up off the internet. Okay? Not only would you probably have some inaccurate information in there, you wouldn't know how to discern what's accurate from what's not accurate. If you aren't the one doing the research, you're just completely trusting this, and that's a problem, because you no longer have discernment. You just take at face value whatever this thing says is true. And if you do that for long enough, anything that would come and contradict what that says now becomes the enemy. Like, no, because you've developed some form of trust in this method of gaining information. And it's a faulty way of gaining information. You didn't really go out and do any research. You just listened to what this one entity pieced and cobbled together, and you say, yeah, but it did the research. It didn't do a lot of research when I did a Google, like, not a Google search, but when I did a quick search, it didn't do enough research to even give me an accurate answer. And if I had taken that information as gospel truth and been like, yep, that's right, not only would I be uninformed, but if that information had any kind of real world consequence for anybody else, I could be leading other people astray as well. So research is a grueling process and requires grueling standards in order for it to be usable and accurate and contend with the scrutiny that it's invariably gonna undergo. Same thing with art. I'm apprehensive about going into this class, Graphic Novel Pro, because I know that whatever value my artwork has today, it's not up to a standard that is going to like, nobody looking at the artwork is going to be impressed by it. They look at beautiful artwork all day long. What they're going to be able to see is, oh, okay, here are the mistakes. Here are the things that need to happen for this to reach the next level, the next iteration. And I have to not just kind of be okay with that. I have to be completely on board with that. I have to be completely on board with removing myself from what I think of an image and open to learning. And that, in and of itself, takes some effort. It's not something that at least comes naturally to me. I want people to be like, oh, that's such a beautiful piece of artwork. I love pats on the back. I don't want to live in that world forever. I want to have the gumption and the courage and the conviction to be challenged and to let somebody who has done it and knows what they're talking about tell me, give me the feedback, let me know, what am I missing, what is it about my work that just needs to grow and needs to develop, because I don't want to stay the same. The thing is, I'm going to be teaching high school art next year. I'm going to have a whole new batch of talent and a level of talent that needs cultivating. They're going to need my help. If I just stay at my current level and I'm not growing, it's unfair, I think, to expect to inspire them. I think the older we get, the more we need better and better mentors, or more specific mentors, I'll say. And these kids are about to embark on the next chapter of their life. I mean, when they get out of school, if they're taking art, they're hoping to do something with their art. So then it becomes part of my responsibility to help them get there, do everything within my power to prepare them. And if I'm not growing, if I'm not being challenged and learning, it's hard for me, first of all, to relate to the growing pains, right? The difficulty of learning new content. And it's also hard to be inspiring. Nobody wants to learn from a stagnant coach. You know, one of the things I love about doing Graphic Novel Pro is I'm taking the class from somebody that I've already seen their work. They're respected in the industry. They have huge projects that they've developed, massive, like world-changing kind of projects that they worked on and have been successful at. And those are things, you know, that are so incredibly valuable when it comes to a mentor. You don't want somebody who has not done it before. It really, it's not that they can't help you on some level. You can get help from just about anywhere. But the older you get, the more you want to have be selective in who you listen to and how they mentor you, and cultivate relationships and cultivate dynamics that are really truly helping you navigate in the place you want to go. Because if you don't make those choices, certainly you will end up somewhere, but it'd be hard to know if you're going to love where you end up if you don't take an active role in choosing some of the elements. Now, we don't get to choose everything, right? A lot of things are just life and they happen the way they happen. But there are things that you do get to choose, and your influences, the people that are in your life, the people that you listen to and respect, should be the ones that I think that get the larger voice when it comes to the direction you're going to go and choices you're going to make. So I feel like I'm preaching like way too much, so my apologies. Just let me know. I tend to just get on a rant and go, and it's not may not be much fun to listen to. So yeah, as I'm doing this, I'm okay with my attempt. I can't really reflect yet on whether I do or don't like it, but I am pretty sure that I don't like Battle Cat's head. Something about it does not, the geometry is not there. So, which is fine. And I will hopefully get a little bit of time and reflect on what I could do, to really understand how to make that better. I don't hate his anatomy, but I do feel like the leg is a little bit, feel like this feels disjointed. I feel like something about the angles here. I guess that's the way the leg comes up, but I feel like this maybe should be up there. Yeah, that was falling short. I think that's a better look at it. So even that little variance from this little mark to that little mark has a dramatic impact on the way that reads. So it can be very subtle stuff. It's one of the things that I find challenging about drawing faces is it's got to feel anchored, meaning that the skull structure underneath has got to be informing so much of the decisions, or the face looks like out of place, looks wonky, and looks disjointed, which is not good. You want people to be able to focus on the emotion that's being communicated, not on the fact that doesn't look like that nose could actually fit there, or those eyes don't look, or that mouth looks like its jaw is unhinged, or any number of different things. And then our faces pick up on very subtle, our eyes pick up on very subtle aspects of the face, because we're constantly looking for visual cues for communication of how somebody's feeling or what their intentions are when they're talking to us. And I gotta go. My time is up, my friends. That's all the time I have for today. I gotta go feed the dog and pack up and get out the door for the day. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Adam writing on Battle Cat for Masters of the Universe. I'm not sure who the artist is. The account on Pinterest says Julius Corbin, but I don't know that that's his artwork or not. Probably on Instagram I'd get a better read, but Instagram is not super conducive for this kind of stuff. I prefer Pinterest for sure when I'm looking for photo reference. But at any rate, yeah, that's a good little 30-minute go of it. But thank you guys for joining. I really, really appreciate it. Please forgive me again if I got too preachy there and talking about life experiences and stuff like that. Those are just things that are on my heart that I've learned, and if I were my younger self might benefit from hearing some of that, but my younger self might also go, be quiet, old man. I just want to draw. So wherever you find yourself today, I hope you have a good day, and yeah, as always, keep trying. We'll see you guys soon.